the recording started as well. So, a very warm welcome to everybody who is here joining us today for our Live Well Live webinar, which is all about the importance of movement and why this is such an important element when we're aiming to lose weight or even maintain our weight. We're really excited to be here today. I am Ruth Taylor. I'm the nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor and also a registered nurse and health and wellness coach. And I've got quite a few colleagues here with me today who I'm just going to let you know who they are. So we have Alison who's joining me to present the webinar. Hi, Alison. It's great to have you here again. Alison's becoming one of our regular attendees at webinars now, I'm pleased to say, and a fellow colleague nurse. So fantastic member of our Boots Online Doctor team, I have to say. And also in the background, we've got Rabdino, who's here helping with all of the IT queries and sharing any resources that we want to share with you. And also Arma Sowa, who is here helping us as well. So thank you to both of you. We really appreciate your support. Just to let you know, for the purposes of the webinars, we really encourage you to say hi in the chat box. So do say hello. I am based in not so sunny Hampshire, and it's a little bit grey and overcast. It's been raining on and off this morning. Good old UK weather reports are always important, I think. And Alison, where are you? And do say hello and introduce yourself. So this is our lovely Alison, everyone.
Yes, I'm Alison. Thank you, Ruth. Well, I am in London, just in response to that part of your introduction, and it is sunny here. So yeah, it's nice out there. I'm Alison Taylor Lamb. I've been working for Boots Online Doctor for nearly 4 years. Ruth has been here a little bit longer than I have, but we've basically been here from the beginning and seen the growth of our service and our weight loss service, which is proving ever so popular. By background, I've worked a lot with children, been involved in the NCMP programme. If any of you have children, you might be familiar with that, the National Childhood Measurement Programme, and I've been involved in healthy eating in early life, and I've also done a bit of healthy eating and everything that comes with that in general practice settings. But probably more so than ever before with Boots Online Doctor because our service is so popular.
It's so true. It's a very, very popular element of the service, isn't it? So thanks, Alison. Great to have you here. So just to remind you all, if you're new, very warm welcome. If you've been before, you should possibly know what happens. We have a couple of polls that we'll share with you during the webinar. Those are completely anonymous. And we ask you really those questions to get you thinking and really so that we can check what's going on for everyone here today and just to get a sense of perspective around where you are in your weight loss journeys, what it is you're thinking you need to focus on, what you've been thinking about perhaps. We also ask you to bring any questions that you have along to the webinars, and they can be specifically related to the topic or anything to do with your weight loss journey. We really don't mind. Just to remind you though, if you have any medically orientated questions on your weight loss journey, we really very much encourage you to direct those to your medical care provider. And if it is outside the remit of what we can safely answer during a webinar, then we'll just direct you in the right direction with those answers, just because we all need to be 100% safe, and webinars are not really the space for one-to-one advice. So that is why we have to be very safety orientated. And if you did bring any questions along or have any questions during the course of the webinar, please do pop them into the Q&A box if you possibly can. But I know that our lovely IT support crew are going to help us find any questions as well. So let's move on and talk about what's brought us here today. So today we're talking all about metabolism, and this is such an important area and something that's often considered but not always talked about that clearly, I think, in many of the sort of weight loss online services or even attendance services. And so we wanted to just get you thinking about your metabolism, what you can potentially do to improve your metabolism. This is such an important element of really long-term successful weight management. So our metabolism is all about how our body converts the food we eat into the energy that we use. All of the tissues in our body need some sort of nourishment, and some need more than others. Our metabolism, though, is how we actually really effectively use that energy that we eat. And obviously, as we've talked about before, all foods break down differently. They all have different roles in our body, and it's really important for us to be thinking about that balanced plate. So if you're completely new, I'd love for Rabdino and Amar to share our core meal plan, because this is where we really want you to focus your attention on just learning about the foods that are going to be really helpful to you. So if you don't mind sharing that in the chat box, that would be great. So, but let's go back to metabolism. There's a few things that can really influence how our metabolism works for us. And there are quite a few things that are way beyond our control. So the gender that we're born with, our genetics, our age, our biological age, our hormones will have huge impact. Our body temperature. So if you're somebody who's either very hot or very cold and you find it really difficult to regulate your temperature, that could have quite an impact. And also for women, the menstrual cycle will also have a little bit of an impact on our metabolism. And all of those things we can't really influence particularly. Sometimes hormones we can work to balance, body temperature we can perhaps sometimes improve, but sometimes we can't really do much about it. So what we also know is that when we're at rest, around 70%, 70 to 75% of our metabolism is calculated or is based on a resting level. So this is about the amount of calories that we burn when we're resting. So those are things like functioning, just being asleep, breathing, our circulation, how our organs work. Will utilize about 75% of our calorie extraction during the day. The remaining 25% is what we have some element of control over. So there are things that we can do. So food, the type of food that we eat and the way that it is digested and absorbed will have some impact on our metabolism. And our physical activity is the one thing that really we do have quite a significant ability to make a difference and have some control over. So this is why we want to talk to you about activity, the types of activity that we do, what really can, in the research, make a difference. We also know that if you're somebody who has yo-yo dieted or who's had a history of this sort of weight cycling where you've lost weight, regained weight, lost weight, regained weight, then what can happen is that your body composition will change. It is very likely that if you've done that without doing all of the sort of like additional support to really support your muscles, then you'll end up with a slightly slower and lower metabolism. So you'll have less calories available to burn at the end of that cycle of losing and regaining weight. So it's really important to get your heads around this. That isn't a situation you're stuck with, and this is why we want to talk about it. So we know that if you regain weight quickly after weight loss, you're more likely to put on a little bit more fat than muscle, and that whole cycle will lead you to have that lower metabolism. But we can do lots about it, which is why we think it's really important to talk about this today. So no scare tactics coming here, just really important evidence that we want to share with you because we know this is really important. And I believe we've got our first poll, which we're going to quickly start sharing with you. Do you want me to have a look for that? Would that be easier? Let's launch. Brilliant. Thank you. So do you have a look at the poll? This is completely anonymous. Have a little think. We've already talked about some of these issues. There's no trick questions. There's no right or wrong answers. The answers are completely anonymous. Please just answer away. We just want to get a sense check of where you're at and be thinking about what's relevant for you, what's important for you. And I can see that there's only the first question's been answered. So what's going on? Is it that you can't see the questions? Please just take a guess. No drama with that at all. So let's have a look. We'll leave you with the poll up for a little while and then we'll talk through perhaps our next slide with you. So the effect of rapid and repeat weight loss. I've touched on this a little bit already. So what we want to let you know is that all weight loss can alter our metabolism. So what we know is that our body really works, as far as we know from all of the science that we've looked at and from all of the research, our body is going to work to maintain the status quo. So it likes to keep everything within a parameter. So whether that's our level of sodium or potassium in our blood, or whether that's our body weight, what our body wants to do is try and maintain the status quo. And that is all wrapped up in our set point. So we have this thing which we call our set point, and that is sort of the weight that our body has adjusted to, and it thinks we're in a healthy state at that set point. We haven't evolved massively from our previous generations. So this is just a known factor. So we can increase our set point up, so our body will get used to that higher weight. We can also bring our set point down. We're often asked, can we bring the set point down? And yes, we know that we can. So metabolism is something that we know is really important. If we have a higher proportion of muscle mass, we can burn more calories when we're eating than we would if we have a higher proportion of fat mass. And we know one of the things I just talked about or just mentioned is if we have done that whole thing of losing weight and gaining weight, which I know I have done, and losing weight and then regaining it, then our metabolism will shift. So we'll have less calories that we can get away with eating after that whole weight loss process, and we'll be much more prone to putting weight on. So this is really important. Our resting heart rate is one of the things that can help in terms of fitness and metabolic health. So we need to be thinking about how we improve our resting heart rate. And Alison, I think you might pick up on that factor in a little while. So our basal metabolic rate comes from a very complex. We can share with you a calculator for working out what your basal metabolic rate is. So Zoa and Rabdina, if you could have a look for that and share that in the chat box, that would be really important. Body temperature, why does that matter? So I know a few people who are always cold, and being always cold can be an indicator that your metabolism is a little bit slow or a little bit inefficient. So it means that you're going to be burning calories less speedily. So that is something to put some energy and some attention in. Moving more can help to boost your body temperature. And also looking at things like your thyroid function can be a really important element of that. And then that body composition. So that's really how our body is composed of fat, of muscle, of lean mass is our muscle mass. We have water in our bodies, we have bones in our bodies. Don't forget, all of those things contribute to our body composition. But in terms of weight management, what we're really interested in is the amount of fat that you have, the amount of muscle that you have, because those are the things that can make a huge difference to your resting metabolic rate, to how many calories you can safely eat without regaining weight, and all of those things. And one of the things that you can be thinking about are your energy and your symptoms of energy, whether you're waking up in the morning feeling energetic, whether there are fluctuations in your weight, whether you're feeling very sluggish, whether you're feeling very energized. All of those things can be little indicators of what's going on in terms of your physiology. So yeah, that's the other thing. The other final thing that we talk about and we think is a really good indicator of health is looking at the variation between your waist and your hips. So looking at that waist to hip ratio. So those are also key indicators of health. So we'll have a think about those. So now let's have a look at what's going on with the poll here. So there's a few people who are confused, don't know what happens in terms of weight loss affecting metabolism. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll have a lot more of a clear thinking around that. A lot of you have recognized that rapid weight loss can lead to muscle loss. That's a really important take-home message. So I hope that's something that is really helpful to know. Strength training and protein, 100% of people who answered the poll know that strength training and eating enough protein is really helpful for muscle building. So well done. 90% of people who answered the poll or who answered this question have experienced yo-yo dieting and regaining weight. You are not alone. This is really common, and this is why we think this is a really important area to talk about. So thank you for answering that. And a lot of you realize that it can really disrupt your hunger, make it very difficult. So then we just asked out of interest, what is your biggest weight loss challenge? So for many people, the maintaining of weight loss is we've got a whole webinar that we've created on how to maintain your weight loss. There will be a recording of that available to you on the YouTube recording section, so we can share the link for that. Consistency and self-belief are up there in terms of things that trip people up, and those snacks, avoiding snacks. Snacks are okay, you can have snacks every now and then. It's just how often, I think, is the key. Alison, anything you want to pick up from there, or shall we move on?
I
Oh,
was
and
on
are you
mute.
muted?
Apologies. Yeah, I had a little bit of a coughing episode.
Oh,
Um, no, nothing on that. And the odd one or two pieces I might pick up in the next slide or two that I'm going into now. Um, so factors that reduce your metabolism then. Now, some of these will be obvious to you and others maybe not so obvious. Inactivity, of course, we know can increase metabolism, and that's why we really do promote plenty of exercise, even if it's not exercise specific, and we will go on a little bit into more detail a bit about this later, but we're not saying that you need to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. It's really important to consider the sort of the exercise you do on a day-to-day basis and the use of your muscles and how that can impact, as Ruth said before. But not only the obvious muscles, your legs, your arms, let's think about cardio health in this as well, cardiovascular health. It's really important to keep the muscles surrounding your heart healthy, which is why certain cardiovascular exercises are also really important to keep that heart strong. Because if your heart is working sufficiently and it's healthy, then your resting heart rate will stay at really healthy range as well. So when we're talking about muscular health, please don't forget about your cardiac health as well. Aging comes hand in hand with some of what I've just said. Of course, as people age, muscle mass tends to decrease, um, leading to a slower metabolic rate. And that is probably primarily or something to do with the fact that elderly people maybe aren't as active. Always exceptions to rules, but aren't quite as active as when they were 10 years, 20 years younger. So it's really important that no matter how old you are, you do keep active in some way or another, whether it's walking in the park, carrying your bags of shopping, vacuum cleaning around the house. All of that sort of activity, as long as it gets the heart rate up slightly, is beneficial. And you know, if your heart rate is going up, it's also beneficial for your heart. Muscle loss linked in with this, less muscle mass results in fewer calories burned at rest, as we know that muscle is more metabolically active than fat. We used to get quite a lot of going back to the NCMP program when I worked with children, the National Childhood Measurement Program. We used to have to make some quite awkward calls to some of the parents of children who were going into the obese range about lifestyle, that sort of thing, because of course with children it's all about prevention. And we did get quite a few hitbacks actually from the parents. Their children might be really into rugby, have high muscle mass, but actually they're using their muscles frequently because of the sport that they're doing. But of course, that made their BMI a little bit higher than someone else who doesn't have that much muscle mass. So it's really important to consider how you're using your muscles as well and how that might impact your BMI. Hormonal imbalances, as Ruth touched on, also affect or can also affect metabolism, conditions such as insulin resistance, polycystic ovary syndrome, which is quite a common problem amongst females. Adrenal dysfunction can also slow down metabolism, thyroid problems, and also consider constantly high cortisol levels as well. Um, Acute episodes of stress can actually cause weight loss, but if high cortisol levels are consistently at an all-time high, so chronic stress over a significant amount of time, that can actually decrease your metabolic rate and cause weight gain. So a little bit of acute stress, we all know it can be good for us, but when that's maintained over time, it can have the reverse effect, certainly on weight and our metabolism. Many people under eating or restrict their calorie intake, and we know this is quite common amongst a few of our customers. Um, when they're trying to lose weight, this under eating and prolonged dieting can actually put the body into starvation mode, reducing metabolic rate to conserve energy. So please also think about that. It's much more than thinking about calories, and that's why we don't really, it is a consideration, but we don't go on about it in too much depth because there is so much else to consider when losing weight. So calorie deficits, starving, although fasting is known to be good for you if done properly, it can actually be also detrimental to your weight loss, and certainly in terms of maintaining weight loss, as Ruth touched on before. Also remember hydration, so critical, and we're also always telling our customers as well here at Boots, who are taking weight loss medications in particular, please stay well hydrated. Hydration is such a big influence on health, all aspects of health. If our body, our system is dehydrated, it's going to be a very unhappy, miserable system. Good hydration is key to health in a much wider general sense. Imbalance of gut bacteria can affect energy extraction from food and so influence metabolic health through inflammation and insulin sensitivity. That sounds a little bit too scientific, but when we're thinking about gut microbiome and the healthy gut that we know so much about now, and how that can influence our general health, including metabolic rate and weight gain and keeping healthy. Nutrient deficiencies, again, all to do with gut microbiome. If our gut isn't working as it should, it might not absorb the nutrients it should. And also thinking about those sorts of nutrients that we need in our day-to-day diet and not skimping on those, and understanding the importance of ensuring we eat or intake enough of those vitamins and minerals to sustain good health. Particularly important for growing children, of course, as well. Low protein intake, already mentioned that, and how that can be detrimental. Also think about more holistic aspects of lifestyle, poor sleep quality, and we do have a webinar totally focused on sleep because it's quite a big consideration, and thinking about alcohol consumption, which can slow metabolism down, interferes with the body's ability to burn fat effectively. So, gosh, I feel like I've spoken a lot there, but an awful lot of factors, all in all, that can contribute to a reduced metabolic rate. Over to you, Ruth, sorry.
Yeah. There you go. I was muted then. I think it is quite staggering, and I think don't be overwhelmed by that level of information and all of the various things that we need to think about. Just maybe make a note of anything that might be relevant to you and just figure out how to do something about it step by step. So, what we know about the importance of muscle is it's one of the things that really helps in terms of maintaining and increasing our metabolic rate. And so we want you to really think about this. When you start exercising, you will naturally start building more muscle. This means that you'll get fitter, stronger, you'll burn more energy. And when you're not over exercising, or when you're not exercising, what will happen is that you will not have the ability so easily to maintain that weight loss. So we think this is a crucial element. You don't have to, like you were saying, Alison, you don't have to go to the gym. This isn't about becoming a gym fixated person. This is just about moving in everyday life, just bringing in movement wherever you can. One of the things I'm really keen for us to do is to think about what that could look like. What is it that we could do even in our home environment or around our home environment that is actually easy to fit in, is cost neutral, and is something that you can really just embrace without it becoming another thing to have to think about every day as a trip hazard or something that's really difficult to do. We can do all sorts of things. There's an absolute additional bonus to moving more or to exercising or getting more active. And that is about how that movement will make us feel. And what we know is that when we're moving more, when we're exercising, when we're being active, we will release more of those positive neurotransmitters in our brain, those happy brain chemicals. So things like our neurotransmitters, our dopamine, our endorphins, which can really help to improve our mood and to reduce anxiety. So that can be a real added side bonus to getting a little bit more movement in our days. Additionally, although we're not sort of focusing on sleep, and I know Alison's already mentioned it, what the research does is if we get that exercise or that activity in at the right time, it can also improve our sleep quality. So there's all sorts of added bonus because we also know that if we sleep well, that is a really big key factor to insulin sensitivity and weight loss and sort of muscle strength. So these are really important things. Yeah, Alison, back over to you. You're going to talk about what counts.
I am, yeah, and I was just thinking about other things. If any of you suffer with restless legs, for example, um, exercise is very beneficial for restless legs, as probably, yeah, anyone who does suffer with it knows, but yeah, all leading to better sleep. So, gosh, yes, so much, so much. So what does count as activity then? Well, we've mentioned a few of those already. So, yes, pretty much everything and anything that does get your heart rate up, even just a little bit outside what is a normal resting heart rate for you. Anything that makes you a little bit out of breath, because we know if you're out of breath, your heart rate is likely to go up. So it's a good indicator. And also, if you feel a little bit sweaty, this is also a good indicator that your heart is working a little bit harder than what it would do when you're resting. And this is beneficial throughout your physicality. Walking, cleaning the house, dancing, swimming, playing with the children, anything, yeah, anything. And also, don't forget that if some of you do go to the gym, not that we're for one moment promoting you spend £100 a month on gym fees, but or if you're one of these people who just goes outside for a run, the really important thing is that you don't isolate your activity to one key episode during the day. It's really crucial that you complement that purposeful episode of activity with regular daily activity. So all those elements of everyday life, keep those muscles working throughout the day, and it will reap rewards.
a really good point, isn't it? Like that sort of it's called that non-exercise thermogenesis, isn't it? It's sort of like that's a bit of a techie term, but I think that the being active in the day has so many dividends. We now know that being inactive is almost as harmful, or maybe even as harmful for us as smoking. So that we know that there's decades of research on the ill effects of smoking. There's a lot less research on the ill effects of being inactive, but what we do know is that being inactive is really detrimental to our overall health. And I'm really into just things that you can do at home. So I've been starting to do some push-ups against the wall, or on the work surface. And also, I don't know if anybody's invested in anything like a weighted vest, but they're really great. And it means that you can just put on a little bit more resistance when you do go for a walk. Um, I've put some weights in a rucksack and I'm doing some stones in a rucksack, which I think is hilarious. But I also then weighed in a stone's worth of stones, and I found that really interesting because it's quite heavy to pick up, isn't
We used to do that in the military, actually.
it? Yeah, I
Yeah, I was
know.
in the military for 12 years, and yeah, to get the weight of our backpacks had to be a certain weight, and sometimes we'd have to fill it up with all sorts of random stuff to get
Hilarious. You're
to
going to
that
have to
weight.
tell me more about that another day. And I think squats are fantastic, aren't they, for building those thigh muscles, which are really, huge muscle group actually in our body. So, Alison, thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. Sit-ups as well, mind you. Yeah, sit-ups. Yeah, still. Although it's good for abdominals, it still uses muscles elsewhere. There's so many things you can do at home without fancy equipment. Um, but don't just even unpurposeful activity, like we were saying, carrying even parking your car maybe a little bit further away in the car park and carrying your bags of shopping rather than wheeling the bags in the
Oh.
trolley to the car. So you've got loads and loads, it's a bit different, but just little tweaks. Um, that you can do in your everyday life that can get those muscles working. And some of them are so simple.
So true. Doesn't have to be complicated at all.
No, not at all.
So we've really covered the resistance exercise. Is there anything that you think is helpful to add to that, Alison?
Let me, oh, right. Yeah. Sorry. We're on the next slide. Beg your pardon. So yeah, the resistance. No, because we actually talked about that quite a lot already, haven't we? And just to reiterate again, that last point, um, prevents age-related muscle loss. And it's so true. If you don't use your muscles, they will waste away. I don't know if anyone's had an experience of a broken leg or arm and had a cast on for 6 weeks or more. Once that cast comes off, you can really see the muscle wastage there compared to the healthy limb. And that's exactly what does happen. If you're not using that muscle, it will waste away. And it's the same principle actually for all of our anatomy. All our organs want to be used, our muscles want to be used. And if they're not being used, they think they're not needed anymore, and they will start to malfunction. So that's a basic principle.
Yeah, and
You,
I also really think you read all these papers, or I spend a lot of time reading papers saying, that our metabolism reduces as we age. And I really think that is because we become less active as we age. If we
mm,
maintained our muscle mass, I don't think our metabolism would reduce. So I think it's sort of like a lifestyle orientated shift rather than a physiological shift. So I find that quite um, misleading information in a way, really, because it
yeah,
sort of
same.
makes people feel that they don't have a choice, whereas I think we all have that choice.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess I think it's really important. I've seen a couple of questions as to how much people should do in the chat box and in the questions. So it's all about you. There's no race, there's no competition. It's about starting from wherever you are. And we often have people who are very immobile because they've got inflamed joints or are waiting for surgery. We know that when you're in that situation, it's just about being realistic. Maybe going for a long walk at that point is not going to be something you could achieve. Or even doing squats would be really difficult. But is there something that you could do with your upper body? There's always something you can do, and it is about just figuring out who you are now, where you are now, what your goal is. You know, if you were to pick up a baked bean tin, could you comfortably lift that above your head 5 or 10 times? And if you can't, then that's your goal potentially, is to be able to do that. So you can use all of those household objects as well. Pick something really realistic and something that is really important to you. If it is that you want to have toned arms or, toned waist, all of those things, you could focus in on those areas. Music, I think, can be helpful because it can really give you a little bit of a boost in your step and just give you something else to focus on rather than the activity itself. And maybe do something with a friend, because I think we're quite sociable creatures generally, and actually doing things collectively can really help the time go and turn it into something a little bit more fun and can bring in a little bit of accountability. So I wanted to finally just talk to you a little bit about what we have found the research tells us about food and drinks that can be helpful in terms of really boosting our metabolism, really helping with that muscle mass, and really helping to maintain and help with the process of weight loss. So there are some key things here. Protein we talk about almost at every webinar, and I think that's just because it is so important. The minimum anyone should really be having, unless they've got some kidney disease or some restriction that a doctor has given them for health reasons, is should be aiming for that 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. And we had a good look at resources that we could share, and we couldn't find anything apart from some really techie resources. So on my to-do list of resources is to create a sheet of foods and the amount of protein per gram. So I'll try and do that over the next few weeks so that we can share that with you, because we know that would be really helpful. So we are on that. That is a work in progress. We know that excess protein is also not healthy for us. So we need to sort of find that happy medium. So the 0.8 grams per kilogram of current body weight per day, you can take that a little bit higher. If you're a menopausal woman, there is some research that suggests that we actually need a little bit more protein at that life stage. And also some really interesting research that I came across recently that actually in older life, in our later years in life, actually protein remains something that's really important for us to be focusing on. So what are these foods and drinks that we've written about on the slides? Goji berries, really interesting little research article we came across that said that 14 grams of goji berries a day could help to reduce abdominal fat. And that's an area that people really seem to struggle at burning and losing. Chili. Chilies contain something called, excuse me, basically the spicy element of chili can help to improve insulin sensitivity, which again can support weight loss. Adding ginger to hot water has been found to potentially help weight loss. So you could get some root ginger and just simply slice it really thinly or grate it and steep it almost like tea leaves in hot water and enjoy that. It's very anti-inflammatory. Some people who have reflux or digestive problems, it'll be one of two things. For some people, it can be really helpful, and for others, it can be the worst thing possible. So please don't do anything that makes you feel worse. There's a lot of really fabulous research about green tea. It has very positive anti-inflammatory properties. It contains this active ingredient called epigallocatechin gallate. I would not say that on a night out, but I love green tea. I've learned to really embrace it. I used to totally dislike it, and that just proves we can change our taste buds. I drink green tea a lot during the day, and it has some real fat burning benefits. So really great. Water, really important. Being hydrated is super duper important. You want to be aiming for a minimum of 1.5 litres a day. We know that water and being properly hydrated can help us break down fat. So it helps with fat burning called lipolysis. Equally, if we're dehydrated, it can make us feel very sluggish. But also, there is some evidence that being dehydrated will be an inhibitor of fat burning. So we really want to be well hydrated.
Can I just
Coffee's
ask you?
interesting. Yeah, go for it, Alison.
Oh, no, no, sorry, I didn't know if you was still going to mention drinks, but
No,
goji berries, how do you purchase those? Are they fresh? Do you buy, where
you
do you get
tend
them
to buy
from?
them dried little
Right.
dried goji berries, and they're very acquired taste. I quite like them, but they are an unusual flavour, I have to say. I don't know if anybody
So
else eats them here.
you just eat them like raisins.
Yeah, but you would just
Okay.
add them to a meal or something. Yeah, good.
Okay. Sorry, coffee.
Yeah, coffee. So some suggestions that up to 4 cups a day could help promote fat loss, but we need to be mindful of how much caffeine we have, whether we have a caffeine sensitivity, and if you are somebody who can't tolerate caffeine, don't go that high, and make sure that you're finishing by 12 o'clock. Also, avocados very high in calories, but have got some properties that can help with fat burning. So again, it sort of like throws all of the calorie choices away, really, when we're talking about should we be calorie counting. So these are really important. Most
Yeah.
important thing is to really focus on eating those balanced, healthy meals, I think. That's the crucial thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and also just to touch on the coffee and the teas, they are included in your fluid intake, but just be mindful of what you're adding to your coffees and teas, the milk that you're using, the sugar that you're adding, because it can make a perfectly acceptable drink actually to quite a sugary, fattening drink, which is what we're trying to avoid or cut down on at least.
Move away from. And yeah, and one of the things that we often talk about as well is sort of avoiding the sort of artificially sort of sweetened drinks as well, because we know that that can be an unhelpful factor for many people in terms of trying to lose weight, bizarrely enough. And we can go into the science of that if anybody wants to know. We have shared our last poll and also the slide, just letting you know what we have coming up in terms of webinars over the next few weeks. We're running webinars all the way through to the end of July, probably finishing around the 20th of July. We'll be here every Monday and a Tuesday at the end of May when it's the bank holiday. We're switching again to the Tuesday because that seems to work. And we're talking all about the psychology of weight loss, and how our thoughts really make a difference to how successfully we are able to lose weight. We're going to be talking all about cravings and how to get over this whole self-sabotaging, a really important aspect of weight management. And then we've got a whole webinar dedicated to people who are wanting to lose weight, who are in that sort of perimenopause, menopause zone of life. So that is what's coming up over the next few weeks. So please do sign up on Eventbrite, and I'm sure
Yeah.
the link will be shared.
What's really great though about metabolism, sorry, is that it's so achievable. So much of this is achievable, and so many small changes can make a massive difference, which is maybe quite different to other areas of weight loss, that we've talked about previously.
Very much so, yeah. So I yeah, agree. It is something we can, it's within our power, isn't it? And actually, even if 25% of our metabolism is something that we can have a direct influence over in terms of how we sleep, how we eat, and our movement, what's not to like? That's quite powerful, really, isn't it? In terms of really making the difference.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So I can see the top answers in terms of what are you going to focus on this week? We're going to be boosting protein. 63% of you are going to be boosting protein. 67% of you are going to be increasing your water-based drinks. 40% of you are going to be setting an activity goal. And around 40% are going to be adding in some of that resistance exercise. So that's great to hear. I hope that has been helpful. We're going to come over to your questions.
Mm. Can you just tell us where we can buy the berries from, Ruth? Is it health food shops or can you get it in supermarkets? Sorry, someone has
You're
asked.
obsessing now.
Someone has asked, so I'm
Yeah,
just.
no, supermarkets, you can definitely find them. I will endeavour to look for them again when I go shopping, and I'll make sure I will just also just figure that out. But I have bought them in supermarkets, yes.
Oh, okay, there we go.
They're not totally
It's
like
nothing
a
special.
niche product.
Okay.
Um, so yeah. So some interesting questions in both the chat and in the Q&A. So we'll start with the question. In the Q&A box, they are anonymous, but I believe they might change to your name when we release that question. So somebody's saying, why do sports people or muscle people get fat when they stop exercising? That's a very common known issue. Is it still to do with the amount of food still being eaten but calories not being burnt as not exercising at the previous level, or does our metabolism change? It's a really great question. It's quite a complex answer. Alison,
Probably,
thoughts on that?
well, I was going to say it's probably a mixture of all of those, um, and composition.
Yeah, I think
Um,
what happens is you lose a
yeah,
little bit of muscle mass, so therefore you've got less wriggle room in terms of how much you can get away with eating before you gain weight. So there you go. You'd have to put some extra thought into really thinking about what you're eating and why you're eating and how you're eating. May be able to get away with snacking less and things like that. When you are active or when you're using those muscles, you'll also be improving your insulin sensitivity because your muscles will turn on the sort of, it's like a lock and key mechanism, if you like. So when you're active, your insulin receptors work more effectively. So that may also be an element. You may lose a little bit of insulin sensitivity. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in the webinars is the importance of insulin sensitivity for weight management and weight loss. So that could be a factor too. Yeah, so those are the key things I think would, for me, that jump off the page.
yeah, I would agree.
Here's one for you,
Um,
Alison. I've started to include stretching and resistance training several times a week, but this seems to be causing quite a lot of pain around my joints. I was wondering if this is normal and will it improve, or should I seek medical advice? Any thoughts on that?
hmm. Well, I think there are a few things to consider. Is the resistance training you're doing something new that you've started? Because if so, then yes, it would be quite usual to get some pain and some niggles. But the more you do exercise, the more you do stretch and the more resistance training you do, the more your muscles will be working, of course, and your system will get used to that exercise. And you'll find you can do a lot more than you used to without getting those aches and pains. But it's difficult to answer that question probably as safely as one should do without knowing the history, because obviously if you've been stretching and resistance training, I know you say several times a week, but if you've been doing that consistently for some time, then it's considering if you've possibly caused an injury or whether you're overworking possibly, which can put extra strain on your system, on your physicality. But I would think it's quite usual, definitely, to feel aches and pains when you initially start exercising.
Yeah, definitely. But also just make sure that if you are doing it at home on your own, if you know anyone who could just check that your technique is correct, because actually we can do
That's a good
things and
point.
actually cause more harm than good if we do it wrong, with the best in the world. So just if that pain were to continue past the first few weeks threshold, then I would really want you to get checked out.
Yeah, I think so too. But do you know what? It's so rewarding. for any of you who have been there, when you start an exercise regime, and at first, yes, you do get the aches, you do get the pains, your heart's working really hard and you get the discomfort from that. But the more you do it, and if you keep it up, the reward that you get from all those symptoms of hard work, they start to pass and you start to get used to it. And you really know that those benefits are kicking in. Yeah, so I'm getting a bit excitable here, but it's just so rewarding, so rewarding.
Yeah, you love it, don't you? Which is great. It's great that you're here and that you have such a positive view of it because I think we all need to adopt that. Really interesting question here, and I'm reflecting on the question and it's making me smile. Um, since the body is so clever, how come the brain doesn't tell us we're thirsty? I ask this since it has no trouble constantly telling us we're hungry. I think we train our brain. So our thirst mechanism can blunt and dull, and if we don't drink regularly, we can almost lose that thirst requirement. We can retrain that. We can really stimulate more thirst by drinking a little bit more regularly, like the water, and by rehydrating. And I was talking to somebody recently, and we were working together in terms of her ability to drink, and it took weeks for her body not to be dehydrated, even though she significantly increased her water intake. It was very interesting. So I think our bodies are, they don't just flip overnight. It takes a long time to retrain that thirst mechanism. And again, with the hunger mechanism, like part of that is psychological, and there's that whole cravings webinar coming up soon. So do come along to that. There's also the whole psychology around how often we expect to eat. And almost we can almost, I've worked with many people and spoken to many people over the years, and I think we can almost get into a trap of believing we have to eat very regularly. And actually, there's something to definitely be said for actually training ourselves to eat less regularly because we actually need to eat less frequently for our
Yeah,
health. Um, but it's almost like we almost train our bodies into what to expect is the short answer, I would say.
yeah.
So I find
But
that really
also,
interesting.
also on that, I would say there's a lot of self-preservation in there, um, because actually we need fluid, and so we have a lot of physical symptoms of thirst that we don't necessarily get
Yeah. And we can
being
almost,
hungry, because it come thirst and meeting that need of thirst and hydration is top of the ladder.
yeah. And also, exactly, but also we can misread those signals. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? That we can almost read a thirst signal as a hunger signal. So we can almost misread. And also, as we age, apparently we lose that sort of thirst mechanism does become blunted. So again, is that something that happens because we don't use it? Be really interesting. I don't think anybody's going to pay us to do any research on that, but it would be interesting to know. A couple of questions about strength training.
Mm.
Somebody is strength training twice a week and walking 30 minutes 3 to 4 times a week. Should I be doing more cardio, or is walking enough along with the strength training? Good question.
Well, again, I think it all depends how fast you're walking. So approx 2.5.
Oh,
Oh, the question's disappeared.
yeah, sorry, it's in
Oh,
the
oh,
answers
no, that's
section.
okay. Yeah, it really depends how fast you're walking and how raised your heart rate is getting.
It's a good question.
So
And
they're key elements. I mean, you can walk 10K, but if you're not getting your heart rate up above its normal resting rate, then there's not going to be an awful lot of benefit from that 10K walk.
I mean, it's good from an activity perspective, but from the sort of metabolism boosting perspective, less so. Yeah,
Yeah,
sort of like a
yeah.
funny one. Um, so do we recommend 30 minutes every day? No, I wouldn't. We need rest days as well. Your muscles need recovery time too, in terms of the resistance training. So maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Would you agree, Alison?
Yeah, sorry, I was so busy reading the question above that. But yes, yes, I would
Okay.
agree.
Somebody's asking for the previous recordings. So, Rabdino, could you share those, please? The link, if that's okay. Good question. Is swimming considered resistance exercise?
Oh, I would say so because it's water, the resistance in the water. But I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but I would say so.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of actually one of those total body exercises. So it actually has cardiovascular benefits as well as building muscle
Yeah,
or
it's an
strengthening your
all-rounder.
muscle. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a really good one. So if that's something you enjoy, even better, winning. Um, Somebody's saying their BMR calculation comes in at 1,514 calories. I know this means I need to consume this amount for my body to function.
Yeah.
However, will I lose weight on this amount or will I need to reduce? So when you look at the
Mm.
BMR calculator, this becomes very techy. So if I hope the person's still here, you then need to add in, I don't know if you've already done this, there's another second calculation you have to do in terms of your activity level. You then calculate your activity level in relation to your resting metabolic rate, and that will give you your basal metabolic rate. And then to lose weight, the recommendation is to remove around 500 calories a day from that level, or around a pound or to 2 pounds a week. But it's all very non-specific, and obviously body composition will make a difference to how helpful that calculation is, which is why we don't really focus in on it hugely. I hope that was helpful though.
Yeah. I just want to comment on that question in our private chat there, Ruth. Someone's asking, is exercising 7 days a week okay? If some days are yoga or cardio and some strength. I would say so, absolutely. And the
Yeah.
guidance is that we should get, oh, I forgot what it is for adults, so many minutes of exercise. Ruth, do you remember what it is? A
What's that?
day.
Sorry.
What the Department of Health recommendation
Oh,
is for
it's
how much
150
exercise.
minutes a week is your minimum amount a week.
Oh,
And then
okay.
for added health benefits, they're saying up to 300 minutes a week. So somewhere
Oh,
within those two levels. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
but that's absolutely fine. And to have such a vast variety of exercise choices as well, that's really good.
yeah, very good. So somebody's
Sensible,
saying they're working on
sensible.
their balance, which I really, balance is really important. So again, working on your balance, standing on one leg with your eyes closed can really help. To book future webinars, you need to go onto the Eventbrite page, and I think we've shared the link for that. So thank you for that. Any last questions? Somebody saying they suffer with numbness in the hands and feet. Is this because of weight or lack of exercise? I cannot comment, and I think if that's a regular symptom that you're experiencing, I would direct you back to your medical provider. There can be numerous reasons for numbness in hands and feet that probably I would want you to get investigated, or for somebody to be able to put some context in terms of your overall health situation. I hope that's helpful. Somebody's found goji berries on Tesco's, so thank you for looking and sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
That's really helpful. Great. Any last comments or questions? We've got 1 minute to go, and I think if that's everything, we will close the meeting or the webinar meeting. Thank you. Thank you,
Oh,
everyone.
thank you. Yeah,
Really
thank you very
helpful.
much.
Any questions? We are designing a feedback questionnaire that we're going to send out at some point, probably not for another week or two, when we're happy that we've got it right. But if there's anything you'd like from us, do let us know in the webinars. If there's any topics that you're interested in hearing more about, do not hesitate to let us know. We're always looking at ways to support you. And really, this is for you. So if there is anything you want, just let us know, please. We're really keen for this to work for you. And really good to see you all. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Alison, and to Rabdino and
And Emma,
Emma. Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Take care.